Hey everybody, happy Wine Wednesday. I'm personally sipping on my Pinot Noir in my Seahorse glass. Holly, what are you sipping on?
Just water tonight.
Water tonight. Ray's got his water, I'm sure.
I gotta go get some more. I've gone through over 2 liters of water today already.
Yep, working in
Working
the
out,
yard will do that to you.
that's it. Sophie, you better not be drinking anything. And guys, tonight is open chat. We don't have a guest tonight, so it's just if you have a question, ask it. If not, we'll sit here and chat about seahorses, chat about saltwater, and then when we get too tired because this girl's working too much, then we'll end it early unless we have questions. If you guys have questions, we'll hang out and answer them. But to start it off, of course, if you're just listening and not seeing, I've got Holly, Ray, and Sophie with me. And Sophie, we were talking last week about how to deal with aptasia. What have you been doing and what's working for you?
So I got some peppermint shrimp, which you guys obviously recommended, and I've had them for about a week and a half now. I noticed my problem with aptasia wasn't too big. I think I saw like 5 little, I don't know if you want to call them like polyps or little heads of aptasia. But so I got the peppermint shrimp. At first I didn't see any progress, but now I have noticed that they have started disappearing, and I can confirm that both peppermint shrimp are still alive.
Sweet.
So, when you said that you didn't see any progress at first, so nothing changed, and then all of a sudden they just started disappearing, or like, I mean, how did that work for you?
Yeah, so for the first few days, I think they just stayed hidden. They weren't really exiting like their little caves. And then they started. I think I saw there was one main head of aptasia that I was looking at that I really wanted them to eat. I noticed that one, it was just gone. Like I never actually saw them eating it; it just disappeared.
Sure.
And then I saw a few others, and those are gone now too. And again, like I don't actually see them eating it; they disappear.
So, is
The
the
aptasia aren't always gone because they get eaten.
okay?
Aptasia will move and hide when they
Sure.
realize there's predation.
Yep. So you got to keep watching for sure. I was going to ask, do you at this point consider your tank aptasia free?
I would not consider it aptasia free yet,
Okay.
just because. Well, no, I would not consider it aptasia free yet because it has been going really slowly. I haven't actually checked behind the rocks yet because there was in the backside. I can't see that part though. So I would have to give it like another week or two before I would be sure that they're actually gone.
Sure. Well, and Ray's point's a good one, right? Is that they can move, right? And you think, oh, it's gone, yay, and no, it just moved. So got to be careful of that. But and not seeing the peppermint shrimp eat it, how do you know that that's what's happening? Like, why do you think that's what's happening?
I mean, I don't know if that's what's happening, but I would just say because, well, I mean, they may have moved. I didn't consider that. But I just say that they ate them because I had aptasia for like 3 weeks before I got the peppermint shrimp, and I saw them popping up like they were never gone. They never disappeared. They never moved. So I knew where they were. So
Yes.
all of a sudden, as soon as I got the peppermint shrimp, they were, and I had like a considerable amount that are gone. So I don't think they all just moved into
No.
places that I can't see.
And do you notice the peppermint shrimp eating when you feed the seahorses?
I
So do they
noticed
come out and eat the seahorse food?
I haven't seen them grab seahorse food specifically, but I have seen that they are more excited. When I put my hand in the tank, they obviously know that food is
Food's
being
coming.
given,
Yeah.
so they start coming out. There's one especially that comes out on the sand here. I don't know. They might alternate which one that is.
Yeah.
But I do see at least kind of like one walking on the sand here.
They're getting braver though. That's good. And I would bet that they've at least eaten some of the Aptasia if you're not seeing it and
Yeah.
it wasn't. I bet they're feeling more comfortable. They're starting to feel at home and going exploring probably like at night when you can't see what they're doing. And I bet you anything they are eating the Aptasia.
Well, and I would say for anybody out there that does try to use peppermint shrimp as a way to fix an aptasia problem, don't expect results overnight.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't see results happening like Sophie has within a week or two, then, it's not a crime to feed your seahorses a little bit less. Because in my case, my peppermint shrimp got very courageous very quickly. And they were coming out and they were eating with the seahorses. And, just
Mine did that eventually too, but it took them a long time. They were shy for a long time. And then, like Sophie was saying about I had one especially, and it was almost like it was the one in charge, because I had one that would come out like that and come eat with the seahorses, and I had one that was really shy that would stay in the cave or whatever and peek out and go back in when it saw me looking at, but the other one would come out and be social. So they're interesting.
Well, and I'm just saying, if you have an aptasia problem and you're using peppermint shrimp as the solve for that problem, and they aren't shy, and they're out and they're like, hey, what's up?
Seahorse food.
well, no, my seahorses wouldn't touch them, right? And then
I mean, their shrimp are excited for the seahorse food.
Right.
Yeah.
Because again, there are some cases on the other end of the spectrum where the seahorses will try to eat the peppermint shrimp. Never happened in my tanks. They're too big for my seahorses. But what Holly was saying exactly is that if they're getting their food by eating the seahorse food, they're not going to go after the aptasia as fanatically as if they're hungry or, whatnot. So sometimes if it's not working and you're sure you have the right species, maybe do a little less feeding for a few days and see if that works. But I'm just so glad it's working for you, Sophie. And now you see no aptasia. I mean, that's awesome.
I mean, no. I do see, I was just looking right now. I see one polyp. What would you call them? Would you call them polyps or heads? Or what would you consider?
Or whatever.
Whatever you want to call them. I see like one more of them. But I do know why I would consider or say that they are eating it is because this rock right here, this one, is the one with all the aptasia on it. I have not seen it anywhere else. Yeah. And one of them lives underneath this rock and the other one lives on top of that rock. So I just kind of figured that that's what's happening to my aptasia.
Gotcha. Well, and another good point is that it usually is in one section, like it's on one rock or whatever. Look at the background of Sophie's tank. Are you going to destroy your aquascape just to take that rock out and replace it, just to get rid of aptasia? I would not. My personal self. No way, no how.
No, I would not either.
Right. So finding an alternative method to deal with the aptasia is key. And you haven't had any problems with the seahorses being stung or anything like that, right?
No. Or at least not that I've noticed.
Right. And you would notice the one time, and I do see you, Cora Works, hi. The one time that I saw one of my bigger females get stung, it was because I was broadcast feeding and a piece of mysis fell into where an aptasia snatched it with one of its tentacles and it was pulling it towards its mouth and trying to eat it. And the seahorse said, "Food,"
no, that's
and
mine.
And so she got stung in the snout, and she, saying a seahorse jumped sounds crazy because they can't jump, but she jumped. She jumped.
Yeah, they do.
And started doing the coughing, stressing out and everything. And I watched her closely. and she ended up being fine. So again, you see aptasia in a seahorse tank, it's not the end of the world. It's not crisis time. It's, let's not let them get stung, because as long as you have adult species, again, if you're talking dwarfs or fry, completely different situation, then it's deadly. But in an adult, normal size seahorse tank, it's not deadly. It's just nuisance, right? And it can be a nuisance to you. You don't like it, or it can sting the seahorses and they don't like it. So get rid of them, but don't freak out and change everything just to do so. So, anyways, I'm rambling, but Sophie, I think you're handling things perfectly. I think the peppermint shrimp are working. Yay. I love it when a plan works out, right?
Yeah, it was a really good plan. It's been working, like it's been a really smooth plan. Just because none of my other, I see that Ray, that you said you had some seahorses that ate them. But the antenna of the peppermint shrimp bother my seahorses, because I have had some I think Fitz tried to go close to one. He was just a little curious when they first came in, and it touched him with an antenna, and he did not like that. And he
Say something about cleaner shrimp too, Ray?
Sorry?
Are you the one that had cleaner shrimp in your tank?
Yep.
And did they bug the seahorse?
It didn't bug them for long.
What does that mean?
Well, the reed-eye tore them apart and ate them.
Yeah.
So
Solve
we're
that
talking about
problem.
cleaner shrimp. Those are big shrimp. I mean, those are big. I've never seen any of my captive bred seahorses ever tear apart shrimp like that. Mysid shrimp, yes. But anytime
When we were on seahorse.org, when the forum was still big, there you would get the occasional person then that stuck in peppermint shrimp, and ended up losing them.
yeah.
My
But it
seahorses
wasn't-
always
it wasn't a
welcomed
food
them
thing.
to dinner. They'd sit there and eat
Yeah.
together. The seahorses never cared. The shrimp didn't bother them. They'd get up
Yeah.
on my feeding dish that was magnetic, the one I had up high. They'd swim up there and hang on the edge and eat with Sadie, and
Yeah.
she'd just be eating and looking at him now and then, but she didn't care. The shrimp was
Well, see, I
careful, like
wonder.
the shrimp wouldn't get in her way. You know, it wouldn't take over the dish. It would just gently take
Right.
what it wanted and then duck so it wasn't in her way. But nobody
Right.
seemed to care.
I just wonder if the level of captive breeding matters.
Like wild
Like,
ones might be more inclined to go after them, you think?
right. And Ray, yours weren't wild caught, but they were probably first generation reed eye, and they were big seahorses, and they were more prone to that predation behavior kind of thing.
Actually, that pair that I had at that time, they came out of Vietnam.
See, right, exactly. So it does depend on where you've gotten them, the level of captive breeding and such, because none of my seahorses ever went after my cleanup crew in any way, shape, or form, ever.
That's why I was worried though, because that would have been a $70 snack if they had eaten the peppermint shrimp. Like, it would have been not good.
Right. And I get that. But I'm going to say, for the record, in my opinion, if you have an aptasia problem and your tank is full of captive bred seahorses that maybe aren't even full grown at that point, I really feel like you're safe at this point. There's always going to be a Ray out there saying, "Oh, my reed eye tore them apart," but though back in that time, it was different reed eye, right? I don't know how better to explain it, but they were closer to first generation, meaning they were closer to being having the internals of a wild caught. I don't know how else to say it. I know
Maybe
the
like
instinct.
the predation instinct.
Yeah. And I just think
Personally, I don't think they lose any instinct. You can go 10 10 generations down, they don't lose that
Mhm.
instinct.
I disagree.
Yeah, I would say
I
I have
really-
ones that are like very, very captive bred, like a ton of generations. And I don't think that this would be the normal behavior in the wilds.
And so another
Yeah.
thing is, if you're buying seahorses, again, everything depends on what you want to do. If you just want to keep a pair of seahorses, none of this matters. Just get a pair of seahorses, that are captive bred, of course, but the generations won't matter. If you're trying to breed, or if you're looking to do scientific research or whatever, you want to make sure that the species that you're buying are closer to first generation, which means that when they say first generation, what it means is the seahorses were caught from the wild, a pair, not millions, not degrading their atmosphere or whatever, just a pair, and then though that bloodline is turned into captive bred seahorses by breeding, and then that first generation of seahorses is sold, or they're bred again, and that's fine. But once you get down into multiple generations, I don't agree with you, Ray. I think they absolutely lose the instinct, and they have obviously never seen the ocean, and they don't have the instincts that came with that first generation, in my opinion.
Well, what's interesting though
I'll tell
is
you
my
something,
fry, I noticed, did like the fry would go and hunt, their live foods. But after they became juveniles and learned about frozen food, it didn't take them long to get to a point to where they didn't know what to do with live food, or they didn't care about it. Or if there was
Yeah.
live food, like I remember putting in live food sometimes when I was raising fry, I'd have extra adults and I'd give them to the adult seahorses, like the adult brine
Yep.
shrimp. And they were kind of interested, but they would sit and wait for it to get in their dish before they tried to snack it. Like if it got in their food dish, they'd snick it. But if it was free swimming next to them, they'd just kind of look at them like, well, are you going to get in the dish or not?
Well, Holly, but your experience is completely different than most other people. Your babies have always been your babies.
Yeah.
And they're a different breed. But I would agree to an extent. Like I just, all of my seahorses that I've ever kept, no matter the generation, they've always gone after live foods, meaning live mysids, live artemia, etc., things that I can enrich. But I don't think I've ever had a seahorse in my house, anyways, a captive bred seahorse that went after something like a peppermint
It went
shrimp
after the
or a
cleaning
ghost
crew.
shrimp, or yeah.
Yeah, none of
But I have had, on the other hand, I have watched a male give birth and then snick his own fry. So another topic.
I've heard of that. I
altogether.
never
I
had
just-
that happen, but I heard it does.
You're talking about losing instinct, though, as
Well, no, Ray, what I
the
was going to
birds
say,
come down
real
further.
quick, wait, hang on. What I was going to say is, I think that male snicking his fry was instinct. It was something moving in front of him. It looked like food. Gone. What were you going to say?
You're talking about them losing the instinct as they go down, then it has to be selective. Some instincts they're losing and some they aren't, because you can take one that's at least 10 generations down and they'll still change their colors. And especially when you put them into a new situation, they'll change their colors based on their surroundings and that's all instinct. Now we should tell Mr. Wolf there that we are going to get to his question in case he
Yeah. All right,
Get-
let's talk about. I want to think about what Ray just said so that I can come back and comment, because I still disagree. But let's talk about Mr. Wolf's comment. Ray, you want to read it?
Well, basically, he's asking for information on dwarf seahorses. But there's so many videos that you can go on YouTube and you can find all sorts of things, but you don't know when people are putting these things on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, you don't know how long they actually manage to keep these tanks going. And I've seen people wanting to put, they're advising people to put them into a 10-gallon tank, which is ridiculous. My own personal experience, I went up to
Why do
a
you say it's
5-gallon
ridiculous?
tank. Pardon?
Wait a minute. Why did you say it was ridiculous to put them in a 10-gallon tank?
Too
Well,
big for 'em.
you'd need to make it practical. You'd have to have 100 or more dwarf seahorses in there to make the feeding protocol work. You have to have the same density of the live food in there for 6 seahorses or for 100.
So your reason is that
So
it's better
not
to
really
have a
practical.
smaller tank. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah. First of all, dwarf seahorses are very small.
Mhm.
Yes.
You look at probably 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches. Their lifespan is usually about 1.5 years. You'll get some that die after a year. You get some that die after 2 years. These, just to give you a perspective, you can put 3, maybe 4 of these on a silver dollar. That's the size of them. Now, the bigger the tank and just having just a few, the chances of seeing those are slim to none. The best way to start off is going to depend on how many you want to have, and most people are talking pairs, 6, maybe 10, even a dozen at the outside. That's easily handled in a 1.5 to 2.5 gallon tank. The 5-gallon tank is good. You can put 50 in there, no problem. It's best before you even get into the hobby, practice hatching out Artemia and enriching them. Because unless you're prepared to keep on doing that perpetually, most people get tired of doing it and they drop the hobby just on that feeding problem alone. So get some Artemia cysts, hatch them, enrich them, because this is going to be an ongoing procedure for you, because they're not going to eat any frozen food or flake food or anything. They've got to have live food. If you get by that stage and still want them, it's best to set up with a species-only tank. And if you've got, say, pick a 2.5 to be an exact, well, oh boy.
30-gallon, you're going to have like 1,000 of them or something.
No,
So go ahead.
Mr. Wolf, I'm sorry, 30-gallon will not work for
dwarfs.
Dwarf seahorses. And pods, you would have to have so many.
So, okay.
Have an Apex Pro and have, what's an Apex Pro?
Apex is a controller. So that's the difference. Here's the thing. You guys are talking correctly and giving great advice, but it also, again, as always, depends on the situation and what you're trying to do. Because
But it doesn't matter whether you're dosing pods or not, eh?
Hang on.
You need the density.
Hang on. So Dan didn't use density. Dan loved the idea of a small dwarf tank with a huge sump, right? Once you had that sump and you had the water volume, you can eat more. But there's also tricks like using lighting so that when you feed, all the
food goes to one corner of the tank or whatever.
There's different ways to do it. I just think saying you can't do it this way is a bad idea.
But I'd like to get into more of what I'm talking about first in my method instead
Go
of
ahead.
mixing up different methods.
Sorry.
I acknowledge the fact that people do it in different ways.
Yep.
But I also happen to know in all these decades I've been into this that most people don't succeed long term.
Yep.
Although
And
you
I've
don't
never.
find out about it because people don't tell you.
Right.
Now, for dwarf seahorses are unique in that most of them will prefer to sit perched and not hunt down their food. They want that density of the food in the tank to be snow-like so that they can snick up the food that comes by them close enough for them to reach out and snick it. That density in
They
itself
just
means,
sit and wait for the food to come to them.
Mhm.
right. And so that factor alone means that a 30-gallon tank is just going to take an unreal number of either pods or Artemia.
Yeah, when you
Was
feed
that
them, you
Sophie?
want it to
Well,
look like a
what
snow
happens-
globe. So that's a lot of food in a 30-gallon tank.
Right. So you'd have to be supplying more food, and then
Yeah.
what happens to all that
And
waste?
then because you have to enrich the food before you put it in, the enrichment, as soon as you put them in there, or as soon as you stop enriching them, they start losing that enrichment. So it doesn't take long before the dwarfs would be feeding off of seahorses with no enrichment left. So before the next feeding, you have to remove the uneaten food so that when you put the new enriched food in there, then it'll be, they can feed just off that rather than a mixture of depleted or enriched food, which obviously wouldn't be as good for them. It's just, there's just so many things
No,
about
you're
putting them in
doing
big tanks.
great, Ray. And I love the point that you made that basically having the smaller situation means it's easier to remove any or get your feeding right so that you know how much artemia to give them so that they eat it all so that you can do the next batch of enriched artemia and not have to remove it. Whereas if you're in a
I've
huge
never,
Go
I've
ahead.
never ever been able to get them to eat all the food
Really?
because, because you would have to leave it in there for days. But the thing is, the feed, when they start feeding on it, as the density goes down, then they're not going to have the them coming by close enough for them to snick up, and you'll probably end up losing them if you're counting on them eating enough to stay alive. If you're just leaving that food in there waiting for it to all disappear before you put more in again.
So how did like Lucy and Dan and everybody else use not big huge tanks but bigger tanks with huge sumps, and they used lighting because the artemia would gather in one place. And while I agree
But
with
that's
you,
only
horses
that's
would
to remove.
rather just sit and snick as the food goes past them. It seems like if they see, okay, the food's all here, they will go eat it.
Except that you're going to have the hitching for the suitable for enough of the dwarfs that you're going to have in that tank, and you're going to have the lighting in that area to draw the live food, and also to draw the dwarfs all to that one concentrated area.
So no, what I'm talking about is a video by Lucy showing a dwarf seahorse tank where literally shone a light up in an area that had no hitches, nothing, and the dwarfs all came up and ate.
Oh,
You're saying that's not usual?
I haven't seen that video.
But I mean, that's not usual. Usually they want to stay hitched and just eat as it comes past them.
If your dwarf seahorses don't go to where the density is sufficient, you're going to lose them in the long run.
Yep. So I agree. It's easier to keep a smaller tank. And
Plus,
I
you
think
could
the
see them
main,
better because they really are tiny. I've had them, and they're like the size of my thumbnail. I mean, they're really little guys, and if you have a little
Jay
tank, you're
Wolf,
gonna be able to watch them better and enjoy them, I think.
So Jay Wolf, the real question is, why are you doing dwarfs? Just out of curiosity. They're cute little things, but like, why? I mean,
it's a lot of
Of
work
all the
to keep dwarfs.
seahorses.
The video that I shared basically compares them to fry. And if you're going to do fry, you might as well do adult species and actually take care of fry and share with the community, because, the dwarfs, they're just so tiny. I will say I've seen many people successful when they are using huge sumps, right? You either do a small tank and you have to clean that tank religiously, or swap it out, like do a tank transfer like every day, every other day, whatever, or huge water changes, enriched Artemia, live foods the whole time. It can be done for sure. Or you can go about it with a sump that has extra crazy filtration in order to compensate for the live enriched feeding that you're making happen. But I've never kept dwarfs. I think they're adorable. I can see why people want them, but I just don't think that people understand the work
They're a
that
lot
goes
of work.
into them. So the video that I linked is basically the video that Dan Underwood helped me make, and it just talks about how they're literally comparable to the adult
I
species
see
fry.
why. Did you see what he says? That's
What?
what his wife wants, is the dwarfs.
But you see, mid-sized
So-
ones aren't available in the hobby anymore. Like there were some smaller ones that you could keep a pair in a 20-gallon tank, but we recommend, like, if you got that 30 there, you wouldn't want to put any more than one pair of standard size seahorses like a rectus or reed eye in
Right.
that tank. And if you can have a sump for it as well, that's even better. But not to put more seahorses in, but it makes things more forgiving for when things start to go south, and gives you a better chance to salvage the situation and correct it so you don't lose the seahorses. But if you have that 30-gallon tank and she wants seahorses, you're looking at a pair of standard seahorses, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she'll
and the thing
enjoy
is-
them. She'll love them. They're friendly. They'll interact with her, and they're like little dogs of the ocean. They're sweet pets.
You need to send her to this channel. We can show
Have
that.
her come on here and watch Sophie feeding her seahorses.
Yes, exactly. Watch Sophie feeding. Your wife will be like, oh, that's what I want right there. Because a lot of people are like, I want the dwarfs. And I get it. And I'm not trying to talk anybody out of dwarfs. That's awesome, right? It's just that they're so tiny. They don't really interact with you. They require live foods.
They're more work. They're cute to look at, but they're not very pet-like the bigger seahorses are.
Tell
they're
your
also
wife
changing up the lifespan from about 1.5 years up to 5 to 10 for the standards.
That's right. Yeah, you can keep dwarfs for about 1 year to 2, and like Ray said, the erectus and redine, etc., can go up to 10, 14 even years. So tell her to come here, talk with us. We'll help. But I mean, seahorses are the most friendly. They are fish, but they're not like fish. They interact with you. The adult species of the larger species, right? So not the dwarfs. The dwarfs want nothing to do with you. They're like, send me my food. I'm gonna hide from you. Whereas
have your wolf, or Mr. Wolf, have your wife look at last week's episode of Wine Wednesday, because if you go through there, there'll be a point there where you're going to see Sophie feeding her seahorses. And if that doesn't get your wife excited about standard seahorses, nothing will.
Right. Well, and he said the food part isn't an issue. You manage 3 tanks now. So what do you mean by that, though? Because I think Ray
I
said
think he
something about
means
copropons earlier.
schedule wise, like as far as the being labor intensive. I think he's saying he's already
Or
taking care of a bunch of tanks, so why not add one more?
no, and I get it, and I
I
get
get
it.
that
But
too.
my point was the reason that I never did dwarf seahorses is because I love raising erectus fry because I have to go through the stage of hatching the artemia, enriching the artemia, cleaning the artemia, feeding the artemia, making sure I'm getting rid of any excess artemia. I do all that, and it's a big chore. But then they get weaned down to frozen
Yeah,
foods, and it's more, right? So it's this little phase. Whereas with dwarf seahorses, that's it
they're always
forever.
forever.
They never
It
on
with the big
food.
seahorses, it's
If
like teenagers leaving home.
Yeah. But I mean, if it's what you want, I don't want you to feel like we're trying to talk you or your wife out of it. It's fine. I just want her to be sure that she understands what it means. Because it's the difference between having tiny little seahorses that you can't see very well, that don't interact with you, that you have to feed these foods and they just eat it as it goes by, versus seahorses that are very visible, that you can literally feed them
Yeah,
directly and they will come
they
up
get
to
tame.
you and interact with you. So it depends on what you want, and whatever you want's fine, right? I mean, it's fine. Nothing's wrong as long as you take care of them and keep them alive,
Yeah.
But and I saw Chris Carey. Hey, it's just open chat wine Wednesday. I can't even barely keep my eyes open. I'm so freaking tired. But we're
Zen
here.
made it too, I see.
I saw Zen too. Yeah. Hello, hello. Sorry guys, nothing, crazy exciting tonight, but we're here to chat and have questions. And we were talking dwarf versus larger species. I'd be curious on Chris's take on that, because Chris has done so many species, and he's a shrimp guy, right? So, be curious on his take on that. But what did you like about raising dwarfs, Ray?
I guess at that time, like this was a long time ago,
Yeah,
decades ago. And it was the challenge then because so many people were getting into them and were never successful.
you wanted to
So
show them.
I got into it for that reason, but it ended up like after a couple of years of it, I'm sitting there. Well, this is kind of really stupid because I'm raising reed-eye fry back then, and the looking after these dwarfs is just like raising the reed-eye fry, a perpetual ongoing situation there. And the fact that they were only living on average a year and a half, when I could raise reed-eye fry up to get them to live way longer than that.
Sure.
Plus, there was a better market for it for people that I could sell it to.
Right.
And you don't make money really raising seahorse fry and selling them, but it kind of, you can sort of help the overall cost of it if it's something that you enjoy doing, which I obviously did because I've done it for so many years.
Sure.
But if you're not into raising the fry, then you probably aren't going to be into wanting to keep the dwarfs.
Well, and what Jay Wolf said is he has 3 reef tanks that he oversees in his house. He has Neptune systems on all of them to keep them up with testing. And so, if you just want to take on that challenge and that's what your wife wants, yes, do it, right? I just, especially someone with multiple tanks and that loves that, interacting with the tanks and seeing the fish or whatever, you have to remember they're tiny.
Yeah.
It is the last thing. If that's what she wants to do and wants to have it. So I can't even imagine a dwarf seahorse tank on a Neptune system. Can we talk about that for a second?
I've never used the Neptune systems, but I'm thinking it because they require so much hands-on care with the way you have to feed them and such. I can't imagine that working very well with them specifically.
You actually, if you're going to keep dwarfs and keep them in a small tank, you don't even have to ever test for anything because you're going
Right.
to do so many
You have to change the water all
water
the time.
changes.
Mhm.
You're changing the water all the time, so nothing ever goes wrong water-wise with there, unless you decide you're going to get lazy and not take things out.
Right. So again, I've seen people be successful doing actual tanks with dwarf seahorses and using a sump and major filtration.
Kelly, remember we had someone on here that he invented an automated dwarf seahorse tank. Remember that?
Yes, I'm not going to remember the name.
I remember that years ago.
But
yeah, I've got his
he shared
web page, and I've got it all in my files here somewhere.
Yeah, because he shared directions of how to build it and everything. It was pretty cool.
But in the end, it got to be too much for him, and he dropped out of it.
Well, but if it's something you want to take on, Jay Wolf, reach out to me on the side via Messenger, and I'll find that either video for you or the instructional if you want to try that. There's many ways to do it. None of them's wrong, right? It's just understanding what you're getting yourself into and making sure that's what you want to do. So it's not about can you take care of dwarfs. It's will your wife actually be happy with them? It is the main thing in my mind. Let's see. Oh, your dad used to raise them. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
I mean, I think if he was
all in the day though. Sorry, guys. Back in the day, though, they used to talk about seahorses being purchased in the back of magazines and such. And to remember that. Dwarfs, and they didn't know how to take care of the adult larger species in tanks back then. And we've come so far, and now we can do it very well. And they are pets, so to speak. So I think it's a different world. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, if he was already planning on getting, a 30-gallon tank, I mean, you might want to add, a few gallons if you want to get, a rectus, for example. But, if you're already planning to get that big of a tank, I think considering a bigger species would be easier because... Right, you didn't already plan for having a small tank. You planned for having a big tank.
Yeah,
so if you they are very friendly, you can still use that tank.
So totally agree with the dwarf seahorses. You're typically looking for a smaller tank where you have to do massive maintenance, right? Mm-hmm. Lots of work. It's you changing the water, doing tank transfer, whatever. Versus if you keep the larger species, you can put them on a system. Neptune is great, right? You can put them on a system and, work it into a schedule that's just like any other tank. It's not like keeping fry or keeping dwarfs, I guess.
There's the link for Jerry's page. It's Jerry Gunn. There's the link for it if you can post that. And he may be interested in having a look at that.
Yep. Here you go. There it is. All right. I see Fish Fam links. No matter where you're at in your saltwater hobby, whether you're into seahorses right now or just joining us to learn, anything you want to ever know, you're going to find on Fish Family. They've got every creator, every channel, anything you want to know, you're going to find there. So definitely go check them out. What else, guys? And Chris, Carey, and Zen, I said it at the beginning, but I'm so tired tonight. I was like, if we do a smaller episode tonight, I'm not going to be mad. We can come back next week, guns a blaring, with a guest or something, but whoo, I'm tired tonight. I know you guys can see it. I'm like not doing well. But I do want to make sure we cover all questions and share what we need to share. Anything new with you, Holly or Ray?
No, nothing I can think of.
No, everybody's doing good here. Dandy's still
If I had
talking.
thought of anything, I know anyway.
Sorry, Ray?
I said if I had thought of it, anything, I would have forgotten it by now.
Well, I will say one thing I want to talk about more next week, if we don't have a guest, is macros, because I have a new one. And what I mean by that is I purchased macros. I have different methods for different species of macros when we talk about quarantining or dipping or whatnot. I've talked about this before, but I think we should talk about it more because there are some that I just won't add to my tank without doing some sort of treatment. There are some that I'm just worried about aptasia or whatnot, like the silkier ones. And so I'll just put them in a tank with light and food and then see if anything pops out before I ever put them in the tank. And then there are some that are just so delicate that I just risk it, right? Because the macro is important to me. And one of the cool things is often when I get those risk it types of macros, a new species will just pop up, right? Because that's the ecosystem. The spores are in there or whatnot. And so I have this new macro that I'm going to share next week and see if you guys can identify it, because I don't even know what it is. I've never seen it before. Yeah.
Very cool.
And it's just tiny. Have a good night. You okay? All right. Sorry. But yeah, so we'll definitely be talking macros next week, just to let you know. I want it to get a little bigger and see if I can identify it myself. But we'll talk more about, what's risky enough to risk and so forth. And again, guys, unfortunately, there's no, this is the answer, right? There's no, you should never keep dwarf seahorses because it's so much harder. If you want to work at it and do that maintenance, keep them. If you don't want to and you're more of a controller type person, meaning not controlling person, but using a controller type person, then, it might be more beneficial to set up a tank for the larger species because that's what does work for them. So it's just doing your research, getting it right, asking us the questions. And if you have more, like what would be really cool, Jay Wolf, is if you wanted to come back as a guest or something and literally come live with us and we could walk through step by step, how would you handle sand? How would you handle this? How would you handle that? And instead of having to wait on your questions and answering them live, you could be asking
part of
live.
the conversation.
So we'd love to do that. Yeah, conversation. Absolutely. What do you think about that, Sophie? Agree?
Pardon?
Sophie's like, I'm not listening.
No, I was listening. I just don't understand what the... Oh, wait, what would I think of having him on?
Yeah.
Oh, I think that would be fun. I don't hear a lot about dwarf seahorses. I didn't realize
Right.
they were that tiny. Like I thought they were like this, but
No, they are really small. They're like mine. I want to say they were about an inch or so.
Well,
Roughly,
that's what she
yeah,
did.
They're
yeah.
probably about
Like
like a month old Erectus fry.
well,
Yeah,
mine never
see.
got to a month old, so I won't be able to.
Better, Sophie. You'll do
So
better.
just think
But
of a
yeah, I mean,
silver
like,
dollar though, and putting 3 on a silver dollar.
right. And the thing is, that's, you know, they have babies and they're even smaller. Like, yeah, they're very small. So nothing wrong with that. They're also almost iridescent and beautiful and sparkly and lots of good qualities to them. Like, I don't want anybody to watch this and be like, oh, they don't like dwarf seahorses. We love them. I just
That's why
personally
I
don't
think they
keep
work
them.
well in a small container. Like if you just have like one
Yeah.
of those big like gallon or so fish bowl things, you could keep them in that. And you just change their water all the time. I mean, a gallon of water is not a lot to change. So if you're changing a gallon of water every day and putting them new food, I mean, if you're up for the work, they could be cute and fun to
Yep.
watch.
So if I ever did dwarf seahorses, I keep saying tank transfer
Mhm.
method, and that's literally to that. Usually, that term is used when you're talking about trying to alleviate disease, right? But no, that's what I would use for dwarf
I would
seahorses.
too.
I would have 2 very small tanks. I would feed the crap out of them in that tank and let them
And
eat
change
up
them to
and be
another.
merry, and
Put them
put
in
them in
another
the new
gallon
water.
jar. Yeah.
Yep. And then transfer them back and forth and clean them
Wouldn't
every time.
it cause
I mean,
like
that
a
would
lot
be
of
the easiest
stress
thing.
though to be moving them like that?
I
Doesn't
don't
bother.
I don't think so,
What
really.
No. All right.
No.
What'd you say, Ray?
Sorry?
What did you say
Oh, I don't know now.
about the stress of transferring dwarfs?
Well, very first system I had for reed-eye fry, every other day. I had them in those 4-liter jars that Sophie has now.
Mhm.
And every other day, I would change them from one jar to another and then clean out the old jar. And so they were being transferred over from one jar to another every 48 hours.
That's how my fry were too.
Never seemed to bother them.
No.
So what do you mean it never seemed to bother them though? Like, did you feed them immediately? And I mean, like, how would you know if they were stressed?
Well, they just seemed to be the same after I moved them over into the new jar from the old jar.
Heck,
Like
mine got dropped on the floor a few times and they went right back to,
So time out.
to regular
Time out.
life when I
Right.
put them back in the water. So.
Right. Seahorses, all species are so much stronger than anybody out there thinks. They are not weak. They're very strong. But I would say there are cues to tell when they're stressing. And can anybody else help me out, or do you want me to ramble about what those might be? Like, Sophie, how do you know if a seahorse is stressing out?
I don't know. I can't answer that question for you.
Okay. That's good.
The only time
And-
I've ever seen my seahorses stressed on anything was when they got scared by something. Like you said, I've seen them jump. I know what you're talking about.
Well, no. So what
they're usually going to seclusion.
Well, I didn't ask the question very well. What I was looking for is if someone's new to seahorses and they have seahorses, how can that person tell if their seahorse is stressed?
I guess labored
So for
breathing would
me,
be one.
Yeah. My answer would be labored breathing, darkening in color. And again, you have to remember they can do that
Mhm.
just because they want to, just because they're on something that's black. So you have to, observe.
Yeah, is it normal
see,
for
is
them
it-
to be that color?
Right. Is that a normal thing for them to do? If they're just darkening and staying dark and they weren't dark to begin with, that could be a sign of stress. Are they doing the coughing thing? Are they snicking food and spitting it back out? Are they not eating? Are they hiding? You know, all those things can be clues to if the seahorse is stressing, and just, you know, keeping that in mind is very important. But I don't think I've ever heard of, you know, like dwarf seahorses stressing out from being tank
moved to
transferred.
another tank. I know.
And you have to understand, like, we talk about this like, oh, they're so easy, but they really are. I have, when I moved my adult erectus seahorses, large, big old, fit in the palm of my hand like that,
up.
right? Hitched on my tail, and their head was way up here. And when I moved them from the tank in my dining room to the tank in my living room, I
Carry
literally
'em.
hitched on my shoulder, picked them
Yep.
up, walked them
Yeah.
through
That's
my
how I
house,
carry mine.
put them in the tank, and they
And then
were
they
like,
let go and they're like, oh, I'm back in the water.
"Well,
They hang on tight
dig,
when you take them
cool
out.
digs. Yep, cool
Yep.
digs. Where's the food,
Yep.
lady?" I mean, that, you know, they're instantly like, "Where's my food now?" I mean, but they're not. And again, that does depend on. I'm talking about seahorses that I've
Yeah.
had for at least a year.
They get
They were used to me.
you, yeah. But I
They were
think
used to my
even the
situation.
dwarfs, they'll get
Brand
used
new
to being
seahorses,
stitched.
don't expect them to be that
I
comfortable.
think
What?
the dwarf seahorses, because basically what I found with any fish is that they all get used to what the routine. You know,
Yeah.
so if the routine is that you're going to put them in a different bowl every day, they're like, okay, here we go. We're going back into the other bowl.
Yep.
I think they'll get used to it probably within like a week or so.
And it's like, you know, I don't believe for a second that it like hurts
Mm-mm.
them or anything. To give a horror story, guys, but also a encouraging story maybe. When my adult erectus big seahorses started having fry, and I was trying to figure it out, right? I was trying to do my best to know when they would give birth, to know when, you know, how to handle the fry and all that. And I think the second round of fry, I was waiting and waiting, and I expected him to deliver on this date, and he didn't. And I went to work, and then I think my daughter called me when she got home from school, and she was like, "Mom, you need to come home. There's you need to come home." And so I come home, and like I'm devastated and crying because there's fry splattered all over and this has a happy ending for anybody that's like, I don't want to hear this. So fry splattered all over my algae scrubber. My algae scrubber had it was a unique design. So it had a tray with floss. So basically the fry come through the YouTube, because it was not a drilled tank, so they came through the YouTube and onto this floss. And they're sitting there, and there's water pouring on them, but they're out of the water. Like, how can they breathe? This is awful, right? And I called Dan, my mentor, and I was freaking out. And I was like, oh my God, I've killed all these babies, and this is terrible. And he said, Kelly, stop. And I'm like, crying. I mean, I'm devastated. And he was like, calm down, go make water. And I'm like, I'm not.
Make a bucket of water.
Kelly. So I go make some water, and I take the floss and I put it in the water.
And they come.
I didn't lose one of them. Not one of them.
I've had them in filter socks, and yeah, they're stuck in there. They're plastered in there. The water's pouring in. You take the filter sock and sink it in a bucket of water, and they all magically come swimming out. I've literally dropped them on the floor and not noticed when I was transferring tanks. I spilled a cup of water of seahorses. I thought I had them all. I didn't. I come walking through the room 20 minutes later, and little heads are lifting off the table and looking at me like there's no water. And they were
Right,
fine.
right.
I picked it. They were all like this big, probably a little bigger than a dwarf, like a month or so old. And I picked them up, put them back in the water, and they go swimming off on their way. They're hardy little guys. They really are.
Well, and I can't explain it. And listen, guys, we're not at all advising that they can be kept out of water or
No,
that
but
any
stuff
of this is good.
happens. Stuff happens.
Stuff
Don't panic.
happens, and longer than you
Mhm.
think is the only point.
See, I think they're
Learn
hardy until
something.
I try to raise them, and then they all just die.
Ah,
That's kind of different, though. I mean, physically hardy. But I'll tell you, I learned something interesting from some seahorse expert is that they can hold water inside their gills when they're out of water. And that's why they're able to be outside of water for longer than some fish.
yep, that makes sense. And Sophie, don't say that. Listen, my seahorses aren't giving me fry either. And yours gave you a few batches and it wasn't going well, right?
Yeah.
That's not that's not
That's
your
normal.
fault. That's them figuring out that they weren't making healthy fry.
Yeah, but I'm worried that they'll
right?
never give me fry again because they haven't.
So I swear to God, they know when you're stressed too and you've got too much going on and you can't handle it. I swear to God, I believe that. But just like kids, right? Kids can tell when you're
look
stressed.
at
But
look at what Jill says. Yeah.
what'd you say?
She says they get stuck everywhere. Found some in my hang on back alive 4 days later.
Yes, exactly. But like in the case if you're wanting fry and they're not having them, like Sophie and I are in that case, I think again, it could be so many things. It could be that the male is too young and hasn't learned how to develop the fry in his pouch. It could be that the female's too young, hasn't figured out how to make good eggs. It could be that we're new to the hobby and we don't know timing and feeding and everything the way that we should, and we have to work at it. And it could be just a bad batch or whatnot. And it could also be just going back to the beginning of what we were talking about, generations. Like, I think that younger males and females, seahorses, that are trying to reproduce, I think you can't judge their batches for at least 3 to 4, I would say, because the first one is always very weak and not always, but you like if it happens, you understand. They don't know what they're doing yet. And then they try again and they get the fryer stronger and then they try again and whatever. If they quit, Sophie, in your case, I feel like something either happened and changed to stop the love music
The
in the
breeding
water or
behavior.
something, or they, you said something earlier about they were so many generations in.
Yeah, there are a lot. Yeah, there are a ton of generations in.
So I really do believe that they can tell if that's the case. I'm not saying that's the case for yours. I hope it's not. But I don't know. I wish Ray was still here because I would have asked him. But I just know that when I first got seahorses and they were very closer to Alcott, they were first or second generation. Those seahorses gave me fry like you wouldn't
Yeah.
believe.
The problem
As
with
it gets spread down,
the problem with kind of where the area I live in is that we have one aquarium called Ripley's Aquarium. It's in Toronto, I think. Demo got his seahorses from there, and then he also supplies them to like all the stores around me.
Gotcha.
So it's like
Yeah.
The only source.
Yeah, it's like the one place, but they're all from him. So
Yeah.
And
that does hurt a little bit. Ken and Joe want to know, how old are your seahorses?
light turned off. They're about a year old, I think. They should.
I mean, did he tell you when you bought them?
No, but I've had them since. I don't know if they're quite a year. I got them in November, I think.
Okay.
So about half a year. I don't know how old they were when
Probably about it. Most seahorses are sold about 5 or 6 months. And that was
Yep.
about 6 months ago. So they'd be probably, you're right, they're probably about a year or so, right in that ballpark, is my guess.
And a year is when my seahorses really started breeding for me. So we'll see what happens. But Jill, I'm curious on your thoughts, just on, you know, the whole generational thing. Like if they're bred 7 generations deep, does that matter? It's a conversation we've had repeatedly. And the thing is, if people are just wanting to keep a pair of seahorses, you don't have to worry about any of this, right? Just get a 30-gallon tank, set up properly, and have your seahorses. No problem, no foul. Me and Sophie are sitting here like, why don't I have fry? Right? So, just curious about your thoughts. But,
There's more
anyways,
questions too.
okay,
From
sorry.
Zan and Jay Wolf both have questions.
All right.
Zen asked,
Well, you go ahead and ask them, Holly.
Zen asked if they stopped breeding after I added my dad's corals. Did I change my feeding or something that could affect my water quality? My water quality might not be as good as it was. With everything that's going on, like in my life, this is kind of the end of the year as everything gets a lot more busy, and then once the summer starts, it'll stop getting busy, and I'll fix that again to be like perfect like it was.
So are you not doing water changes like you should, or what do you mean by your water quality?
There were a few water changes that I skipped because of like weekends that I had dance competitions, and then I made a few of them up, like the Monday after, and I didn't. And then like I have a bunch of school projects too, which means a lot of things are done doing that. So
life.
I have to do that. I'm also going on vacation soon in like a week and a half, so I'm gonna have to do extra water changes then. So then the girl that's staying at our house doesn't have any problems with the tank.
So again, they know when you're stressed and your life's hectic, and they're not going to give you fry.
Yeah.
But
So
no,
that
great question then, because you typically, if they are breeding and they stop, it's because something changed. Totally agree. Go ahead.
It might have been the water quality. My dad's corals, I don't think they have anything to do with it, just because I did add them like way after. Well, not way after, but like at least a month or two after they stopped breeding. And then did I change the feeding? Not really. I mean, some days I only do 3 feedings, but not really overall. But there are some small changes. So if they did kind of feel that, like in terms of the water quality and in terms of like a few feedings that were missed, then maybe maybe that's why they're not giving me fry.
It's hard. It's really hard to say. My experience when my seahorses were having fry, it was some of the worst tank conditions I had. So because I hadn't fully learned yet from everybody what I needed to do to be successful in keeping them. But at that point, the seahorses didn't seem to care. They were living in a swamp practically, but they were producing fry. So you never know, I think, when what it is that can trigger. It could be different things for different seahorses too, I imagine.
Sure. But the cool thing is that Jay Wolf wants to come on. I think I saw some thumbs up. That if you're ready to come in and talk to us live, we can hash this out, question for question, right? Like, we don't always have the answers, but we can and then we want you to come back and share what worked for you. I've never kept dwarfs. So if you do something that really works incredibly, we want to hear from you prior to doing it and then afterwards. And you come and
And
share,
how it
hey,
worked,
it
how you
worked.
did it.
And exactly. So get with me on the side because we want you to come in here. And his other question was, it is very hard to pass out this to people in the trade after they have few clutches of them. What do you mostly do with them? I didn't read that well.
Well, yeah, he was asking if it's hard to pass the seahorses
To some,
along in the tray. Like, what do you do with all the
gotcha.
babies?
I
And I
wouldn't-
can say it's different for everyone, probably, but where I live, I'm in a mountain community. There's not a lot of people that keep aquariums, period, fresh or saltwater. And I had an incredibly hard time finding homes for my seahorses. I had to take my first batch. I only had 5 survivors of that batch. I kept one of them. I still have her today. She's turning 5 years old. And the other 4 I had to take to a pet store 2 hours away. And I didn't really get that much money for them, $30 each. And it cost me way more than that to raise them. So then my next batches, I ended up shipping them around the country. That ended up the only way that I could sell them. And that was still hard. But I think it's because of where I live and I don't have any contacts in the aquarium community here.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, for you in a community like that, it would be, for me, it's a little easier just because I do have more stores nearby. I think a lot of, like, same with you, Holly,
Mm-hmm.
most, like, my saltwater stores, the bigger ones are in Toronto, so 2 hours away. 2 hours and a little bit sometimes. But there is one store in London that would take them, but again, I'm kind of worried about the price they'd give me for them. They said they'd take them, but I don't think they'd give me that much. With like,
And finding a place too that has a system that's safe for the seahorses, because most aquarium stores don't have a dedicated seahorse tank. They have the tanks are all connected, so they're going to be very prone to disease and poor water quality.
yeah, that is, I have a store that opened that's only 20 minutes away. They're new, they're growing really fast. And they did open like a saltwater section, and they are creating an entire seahorse system. They're still
That's
setting that
cool.
up though. But anyways, I don't have fry to give them, so I
Yeah.
haven't really
But
checked
that's
on how
cool that somebody's doing that, because, yeah, you don't see that often. And where I live, the people that do salt water, they all do reef tanks. And seahorses are not really reef friendly.
Yeah,
They don't they don't do well in reef tanks. They need their own species tank. There's some other fish and some things that they can live with would keep in a reef, but you have to be careful about what you put with them, because they like water conditions. There's things that can hurt them, there's things they can hurt. So they're not normally kept in a like coral reef, normal corals.
yeah. I don't like, other than Ray, I was incredibly lucky to find Ray, which brought me to this community. That's how I also ended up getting them from Demo, from where I got them. But I don't hear very often about them. And then the people I do hear about, like especially the ones that come onto the channel as guests or just anyone in the comments, mostly are in the States. And I can't do anything with the people in the States.
Mhm.
And again, like here, I only have like all the places basically are supplied from the same store that I got my seahorses from.
Mhm. I have one local fish store. It's an hour away from here. And when my seahorses, were having fry, I went and talked to them about, if they could sell fry for me. And they said no, frankly, because they never have any success in keeping them. They always die fairly
Yeah.
quickly. And it's because of that shared system thing. Like I keep the temperature on my tanks right around 70 degrees and below to prevent bacterial growth. Whereas
Mhm.
most people that are keeping reef tanks, and what you'll find in the fish stores is they're keeping the tanks like 78 and above because that's what tropical fish like. And
Yeah.
seahorses are not a tropical fish. So they don't have the right conditions to keep seahorses in the fish stores generally, unless, like I said, they have a special tank specifically for them. So I think that's part of the issue too.
Yeah. I I think a lot of people don't know at all what to do with them because
Mhm.
I had when I was just kind of getting into the seahorse. Oh, we lost Kelly.
Oops.
When I was just kind of getting into the seahorse community, I didn't know anything about them, right? So I went to stores,
Mhm.
not knowing that the stores will not give you very much useful information. And I went to one store, and he was like, "Oh, well, they won't even." Sorry about the dogs in the background. They won't even last 2 years, right? Like they'll die. And I think I just quickly came to find that it's just because people don't know how to take care of them.
Yeah. Yeah, they're different. They're different from other fish. I would say they're not hard really to keep. They're just labor intensive, and they
Yeah.
have different requirements from most other fish. But once you learn those requirements, I mean, I have my oldest is going on 7 years old now, and the ones that I raised are turning 5, this summer and fall. So yeah, it can be done. They're a lot of fun, but they're a lot of work too.
Yeah.
Just a different kind of fish from most of your other saltwater fish.
See, that's how I want to be able to keep when I get fry. I want to have my own seahorses that I've raised since they
It's
were just
it's
fry.
so cool. Yeah, it's so cool. And yeah, they get so friendly because they've had you all along. They know you. They get to know you. So they're a lot of fun. That's for sure.
Do you have any more questions?
I think Zen says, I bet come July and August, when you've got it all dialed back in, you'll get a few more batches of fry until you go back to school again. Maybe a life cycle that happens.
I think I'm like Kelly and I have too many things going on in my life. Um Other than only school because I know I have to go to school, but I have a lot of other
Yeah,
things
it's
going on.
it's hard to say. You never know with seahorses. I've had some. I had a pair that would go through all the motions that I'd swear they should be having fry, but they never did. They wanted to fool around but not have kids, I guess.
And
Oh, there's
I
Ken
think
and
people
Chip.
are really getting into the macroalgae
Yeah,
tank.
microalgae tanks and soft corals. I think she means macros and soft corals.
Yeah, I have both macro and soft corals um, in my tanks. In my tank, it's not
Mhm,
plural. That one doesn't have anything in it.
mhm.
But it's just like I did it because I wanted a saltwater tank because I realized that like I watched a documentary on like how the ocean is disappear like the corals and stuff are disappearing. So I kind of wanted that. in a tank. So I didn't, just because I got Seahorse, I didn't want to sacrifice like that part of it. But yeah, I think that for a lot of people, they don't want to sacrifice like the reef tank part of it. So I think having macroalgae and soft corals with seahorses helps the seahorse world. Do you know if Kelly is coming back?
I was gonna message her, but yeah, I wonder if something happened with her internet or something, because it's not like her to just disappear. Maybe she's having technical difficulties. There's Kelly.
Yeah.
I'll message her. Is anybody else asking questions?
Jay Wolf just said I had issues when I bred convicts and had thousands of them. All the local stores traded or gave away.
Yeah.
And convicts refer to
Yeah, those are they're a cichlid. I used to
We
have
had
them too. Yeah, one of my first freshwater fish were cichlids, convicts. And yeah,
Yeah.
those are cool fish.
They're really aggressive though. We had them in our tank and they were really aggressive.
I had mine, they were alone in the tank. It was just them. And there's reasons for that. Yeah, they are aggressive fish.
Yeah. We have a big 60-gallon freshwater downstairs, so we had a bunch of fish already. And then my dad got some because he thought they were cool. And they ended up being really aggressive. Then they had babies and they became even worse. So I had to give them back.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, I'm not hearing from Kelly, so, and it's not saying she saw my message. So my guess, maybe something happened to her internet or something.
Yeah.
I am tired too, so.
Yeah, me too.
I'm thinking, unless anybody has anything else to say or any more questions, I'm probably ready to go. So, last call, everybody. Any more questions or something you want to talk about?
And yeah, Zen was just saying, she did say she was tired. I hope she didn't nod off. LOL.
Yeah. It was kind of sudden. My guess is technical difficulties.
Yeah.
She just disappeared all of a sudden. I don't think.
Oh, Kelly's always got like 100 things on the go. So.
Yeah. I think her daughter was just leaving too. So maybe she had to talk to her, but. They will message us. Thank you. Yeah, nice to meet you, Jay Wolf.
I always like meeting new people.
Same here. But I guess I'm ready to call it a night. Are you, Sophie?
Yeah. Me too.
Right.
I don't have anything. I'm not drinking.
Then I'll say cheers and happy Wine Wednesday to everybody.
Happy Wine Wednesday.
We'll be back next week.
See you next week. All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.